Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Ariel Gale on the show with us. She's a women's physique competitor who last competed in 2016. She's an expert level resistance mover. She's also possessed by strength, obviously, we can see just by taking one look at her. And she's also the founder of ARC EO1. Yeah, look at that. That's just, come on, people. So ARC EO1 is also the brand that she just came out with. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Ariel, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired you to adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle?
Yeah, so I was a swimmer in college and, high school, elementary, and I continued swimming in college. And we started lifting weights in college. And actually, my mom was the first person who took me to the gym. So when she took me, it was because her doctor had told her to, start being physical and taking care of herself because she had cancer. And so she had cancer for 3 years. And I was her caregiver during that time. And so I think I was 12 years old when she first took me to the gym and when she first, was sick. And so that's my first memory of her, bringing me to the gym. And I wasn't technically allowed in there because I was too young, but, they thought I was responsible and I could, not mess around in the gym. So I took it really seriously from the beginning. And so she fought with cancer for 3 years and I was her, primary caregiver as, a middle schooler and freshman in high school.
Yeah.
And so she passed away when I was a freshman in high school. And then the remainder of my high school, I lived with legal guardians. And so, the way that I got through all that was just athletics, swimming, and horseback riding. And then I continued on with all of that stuff in college. And I, picked a college that I could swim at. All my academics was I'm going to school to learn, but I'm actually going to swim. Yep. Let's be real. Mm-hmm. And it was a D3 school. I didn't have any scholarships, but it was really what I was, who I was. And then, we were swimming in the morning, 6 a.m. practice, swim in the afternoon. We lift 3-4 days a week. And that's when I first really learned this idea of lifting body parts and what things to do. And I started wanting to do that more than I wanted to do swimming. I was so burnt out with swimming and I hated it and I was done. And I remember staying up late one night and just being I quit. I don't like this anymore. It's not fun. I'm not getting faster. The girls that I was swimming with, they didn't care. They were out drinking and doing whatever and swimming faster than me. And I was just why am I doing this anymore? And so after I quit, I was just an identity crisis and I had to replace it with something else. And then that's when I started lifting weights. And I met a guy in college and he kind of was I do bodybuilding. And I was what is that? And I started looking at these Oxygen magazines with Jamie Eason and Ava Cowan and they just had ripped abs. And I was how do I look like that? I just found one of my folders yesterday and it's just packed full of magazines. Ripping them out and all the meal plans and all the weightlifting and how to look like that, just because this was before Pinterest, it was I was saving my own stuff to be I'm going to do this and I'm going to figure out everything I can about this. And this is 100% what I am and what I'm doing now. And so I learned a little bit from that guy. And then I went through a breakup. And I was living all alone for the first time in my life. I was in my apartment and I had nothing and I was depressed. And I was on bodybuilding.com and I was I'm going to change my physique. I'm looking at all these, people on there and all the information that was put there. And back then, it was the only place to go was bodybuilding.com. Now it's everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, everything. But before it was bodybuilding.com and you posted your progress pictures on there and people could rate them. And, it was the only place for it. And so I got into that, and people were giving me good feedback, like, "Oh, you have good calves," or "Oh, you have good traps," but that was it. That was the only muscles that I had from swimming, and I was still like very soft, and I just couldn't figure out the eating at all. Like, I would follow these meal plans, and it didn't make sense, and I wasn't getting results. And after that breakup, I remember on my Christmas break, the gym for the college closed down. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, this is the only thing keeping me like alive right now is the gym. And so I knew at that point it was either I spend it in my apartment alone, which I was afraid of. I was afraid of what I was going to do and what would happen to me, or I leave my house and go find somewhere else to go. And I went and found like a real weightlifting gym. And I walked in, and the front desk guy, I walked in there, and I was like, I'm doing a bodybuilding show. And he was like, okay, great. He had done one, I think. And he was like, well, let me show you how to do it. And so like he started lifting with me. And then he passed me off to a woman, Sally Lamb, and she just showed me everything. She took me through my whole first prep. She trained with me. She taught me the diet. She got me through that really tough part of my life. And I did the show. I graduated college, and then I moved straight to Colorado. So it was like 3 things all at once. And, when I was moving to Colorado for a job, and I was like, is there bodybuilding people there? How am I going to find them? Like, I want to keep doing this. And so as soon as I landed in the Springs, Colorado Springs, I went out to Gold's Gym, or I went out to Flex Gym, and I just trying to plug into these people wherever I could find them. Because there wasn't an online community of Instagram, and there was nothing. It was go out and find the bodybuilders, safari style. Where are they? Where do they live? Where do they eat? Where do they exist? How can I be one of them? And
leave a trail of protein, and then you'll find them.
Yeah, exactly. So I went there, and I remember some of my big influences when I was there was Nola Trimble and Tracy Bodner and Marlena Eckahawk. And this was like right when women's physique started up. They hadn't created it yet, and there was all this hype about we're bringing this new division. And I should say, my first show I did bodybuilding. I didn't even compete in figure. I bought the suit and the shoes, and the guy at the front desk was like, "No, you have too much muscle. Do bodybuilding." I was like, "Okay, I guess," which I love because I wanted to do the routine. Like, I'm a performing artist. I'm an artist. And that was like a really big deal to me to do that. So he definitely steered me in the right direction. And so I'm looking to these women, they had competed in figure, most of them. Tracy Bodner did women's bodybuilding. And I'm just studying their physiques, and everybody's anxious about what is women's physique going to look like. And then the first show came out. I think it was a Desert Muscle Classic or something. It was like Marlena Eckahawk, Dana Lynn Bailey, and Corrine Nascimoto, or something. I can't remember how to say her name. And I was just like glued to my phone, like refreshing the bodybuilding pages, trying to get these pictures and being like, what does it look like? And just trying to like emulate all that. So then I decided to do my second show, and they still didn't have women's physique for the amateurs. And so I did women's bodybuilding again. And, one of my biggest inspirations then and now is Lena Popa.
Oh, yeah.
And that second show in Denver was the first time I met her. Like, I saw her across the room, and I was just like, in awe. I couldn't believe it was her. And I couldn't even go up to her. Like, my friends had to go get a picture, So, met her, and Kai Green was the guest poser, and and that was just kind of then it was show after show after show. I think I've done 16 shows since 2011. Yeah, like 2, 3 a year, 4. And like, I had a very calculated plan. I knew that I was going to leave a trail of my progress on the internet. That was always my goal. That anybody from the very beginning could see what I looked like the first time I stepped on a national stage, which was in 2012. And Dave Palumbo prepped me, and it was like he was like, this god in my mind. I was like, oh my God, Dave Palumbo of RX Muscle, he's taking me on it. So I took his prep very seriously. Like what he said, I was like, law.
Yep.
And I lost everything. I was 118 pounds on stage. And I'm 5'5". At that point, I think I was 5'4". And I showed up to the North American Championships. And, people are like, I remember somebody in the elevator was like, oh, are you competing in bikini? And I'm like, no, this Physique. This is my first national show, and I got first call outs. I got 7th place, but I was like, no muscle at all. I think if anything, it was just like, oh, that girl has potential. Like she has the structure, but there was no meat on the bones. And I came off stage and I'm looking at Dave. I'm like, oh, let's do another one. He's like, no. I'm like, let's do nationals, which was like 3 months away. And I'm like, I can grow a muscle. And he's like, no. I still had no idea about anything. I had no clue whatsoever. And he was like, you need to grow. And I was like, okay. And I went back home and I was super defeated. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just do figure because this growing thing isn't going fast enough. Like, I'll just compete in figure. And then at this point, I was already at Armbrust Pro Gym, which is where Phil Heath trains and, a lot of these other top bodybuilders. So I'm like looking at these people and being like, I can do this. They're right there and they're doing this. Like, I can do this. So that place was like, I was there for 7 years. Like, that was a very cornerstone. That was like bodybuilding college. Like I went to bodybuilding college and I learned from Alina Popa and I learned from, Dorian Haywood. He, had me under his wing for many, many years and trained with him. He's a professional bodybuilder, coached me, and amongst many other trainers that I've just worked with or absorbed stuff from, Ben Bukowski, Tony Freeman. Like I was like, how can I learn all the secrets from all these people and put it all together in my bank and just be, a pro bodybuilder in terms of knowledge. The pro status winning, I knew, based on like intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Like I was never intrinsically motivated by being a pro IFBB. I was motivated by being like, how much can I know about myself and how much can I teach others and teach them how, to like, if I'm, the programmer of my body, how can I know what to do, when to do it, how to do it so that I don't need to rely on somebody else to tell me what to do with my, physical body. And so that's always been my goal. And then I knew that once I achieved that, then I would go pro, whether that reflected on stage or just, in my heart that I'm like, all right, I got it. I know all that I need to know with this sport. And so, when you asked me earlier, am I done competing? The answer is maybe. I'm not done learning. I'm not done knowing it all. And my physique has not been where I want it to be, but also the influences externally of how, the NPC and the IFBB is kind of setting standards for how they want, at least the women who are winning to look. I'm kind of like, maybe I'll do this on my own. I'm still on my own, growth and development. And will I ever quit being a bodybuilder? No, because the change that I made when I went from swimming to bodybuilding was I'm always going to love doing this so that I don't ever have to quit. But the swimming, I didn't love it anymore. Yeah. And I lost my identity. And, I am a bodybuilder.
I mean, I get that 100%, especially talking about, like how I was a pitcher and then, I wasn't a baseball player anymore. So just trying to find that identity. I mean, I completely understand, but I always love to make the statement that if you were to walk into a gym with, 100 people in it, there's 100 different ways how they got into shape, whether it comes down to, I mean, like their diet, their training, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. Was that a struggle for you at all to sort of find out what worked best for your body? Because I always say, like, if you were to walk up to someone in the gym and say, hey, this body part of yours looks really, really amazing. What did you do to get it to look like that? What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you.
Hmm. So, from the beginning, I always had really good calves. Like I would just
Lucky.
pre-stock calves, and that was like always the people was like, oh, what do you do? How do you get those? And I'm like, sorry, like they just came that way, but now like I can really, teach people, because they're like, oh, and all I have to do is listen. Like, oh, my calves never grow. And then I start asking questions. And what you find out is they're not consistent. And they're telling themselves, my calves don't grow. So they're automatically programming themselves to believe that they're not going to grow their calves. All right. Now, if I can change that mental programming and them being like, instead of thinking, oh, my calves suck, or oh, I don't want to do them, or oh, they're not growing anyways. If I can kind of start to reverse that process and get them motivated to do something about it, then change happens. And instead of looking in the mirror every day and being like, oh, my calves are tiny, they're not, and that constant negative self-talk, then they're never going to see if their calves are growing, because the only thing that they see is that they're not, because that's what they're telling themselves. So that's kind of where, and that just comes with, confidence and, but like you said, it doesn't matter kind of like sets and reps and all that matters is if you're doing it and if you're doing it with correct form. So that would, if I can say anything as like a tagline in bodybuilding, is learning the correct form. And that's hard to come by, because you can hire a personal trainer at a gym and they can put you through stuff, but they don't even, like I've seen so many, like I personal trained for many years and I see many personal trainers and I'm like, that guy doesn't know anything. Yep. He doesn't know what he's doing. Like he can move people and that's great. But in terms of like weight training and body mechanics, like, there's definitely an art to, moving the body and being connected to your muscles and feeling it, okay, I'm using this muscle here to do this exercise, not here,
Yep.
My trap. And like, and I would see, like, I could look at any bodybuilder, male, female, I'll look at their physique and I'll be like, all right, you're using that spot instead of doing that, and then it's tweaking their form and doing everything I can to get them to actually engage and use that muscle where they want to use it, put that force into it and make it work rather than something else working.
100%. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, well, especially being in high school and seeing all those teenage guys that just think about, like, hey, if I just lift the most amount of weight, that's what's going to happen. And just seeing all of the guys, trying to do lifts that, I mean, they'd never be able to do and just doing the crappiest form. And then you always see that just those people that just know, like, too, it's just like, the weight doesn't matter as much as the proper form. You could see guys, doing like, 10, 15 pound curls as opposed to the guys that are struggling doing, like the 40-pound curls and are moving their entire backs around, or just any other type of exercise like bench too.
That's fine. Like if you tell me you want to be a bodybuilder, then you gotta lift like you're connected to your body. You gotta lift like an artist. If you're telling me you just want to go to the gym and crush it because you have aggression or you have fears or you have whatever it is that you're going to the gym to work out. I see the gym to me is like a church. It's the sanctuary. You go there and you do what you need to do to feel better. Whether it's be a bodybuilder and you look in the mirror and you're like, yeah, I'm looking good, or at least I'm looking better than I used to look, because if you talk to 90% of them, all of them are like, they hate themselves in terms of like what they look like. And I think that that's a real transformational process. When you get a bodybuilder before, when they bodybuild because they hate themselves, and then they get to a spot where they're like, no, I really like how I look and what I've done because they built it. And then there's the egotistical ones that are just like, covering up all that insecurity.
We've had one or two on this. Yep, I can tell. Yeah.
So back to what I was saying. What was it before that?
Oh, we were talking about,
Oh, the heavy
yeah,
lifting.
yeah.
Yeah, like if you're just going in there and you need to do that because you had a shitty, day at work and whatever, then fine. Like I personally don't go to the gym and watch people
Yeah.
and be like, oh, look at their phone. Like that doesn't serve me. I go to the gym and I do what I need to do and I do it how I need to do it and I get out.
Mhm.
I'm not there to pay attention to other people
Oh, yeah.
unless they pay me to pay attention to them. That's what I do as a personal trainer. You pay me for my time and I'll give you 100% of my attention.
Yeah.
And, I don't go in there and like give it for free,
Yeah.
essentially.
Absolutely. And yeah, I was just talking, about those guys in high school, like when we're doing lifts for like strength training to like get better for like
Right.
football or whatever, and those guys are messing around. It's like, yeah, so there's just a lot of stuff that needs to be taught better to people just because they think that, like, hey, if I can lift this amount of weight, I'm better than that person, where it's just like, no, it's just, I mean, a lot of people do their different things with weightlifting, but there's just so many different ways as to how people get it done. So it's just hard to sort of find the right balance for a lot of people. But one of the biggest missing stereotypes that I love to bust on this show, I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years with Instagram, but there's still just a lot of women that believe if they touch one weight, they're just going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight and, wake up the next morning and look like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or someone. And I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I would be a very, very rich man. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you haven't, I mean, being that you were a personal trainer, I bet you heard that all the time. What do you normally say to that when you'd hear that?
So I'll just start off with saying that when I got into bodybuilding, I wanted to look like Jamie Eason. All right. Like that was my goal. And somehow 6 years later, I look back, even just like when I look at pictures of her now, and I'm like, that's what I wanted to look like. Like, how did I make that jump of like going from for me, a normal sized woman to where I'm at now? My highest weight is 180 pounds at 5'5", and the best answer that I can give for that is that my training and type of person that I am is the amount of effort that I put into my training for the last 8 years. Training came first. Like, and it also was, when I'm talking about the gym and church and, my training was like prayer. I take it very seriously and I crush it every time. And when I don't, it's like I beat myself up for it. So that, hour, 2 hours, sometimes I train for 3 hours was like, if you imagine, the image I have in my head are like these monks that are like flogging themselves. That's what I would do in the gym. But that's how my swim practices were too. You're swimming for 2 hours and you got somebody in front of you that you're chasing and you got somebody behind you that's on your toes and you don't have an option. You can't quit. You are done when you hit the wall and that's it. And that's my approach to bodybuilding. Like, 2 hours in and like I'm starving, I'm dieting for these bodybuilding shows and I look over at my training partner, and I've had really good training partners over the years, like people who like really also push hard. And then I've had people who have lasted like a week. I train with them and I'm like, you just can't bring it. Yeah. Like they want to quit after 40 minutes or they can't do the supersets or they're on their phone or they're talking about other people looking out. And I'm like, hey, we're right here. Be in the here and now. We're doing this. And this is the only chance that we have today. And so back to the how did I get this big? Well, I put in the time, the effort, and the energy every single day. And there was no limit. Every single day it was like, 110%. So when the women say, oh, I don't want to look like that, I'm like, don't worry, you won't. The famous Arnold quote.
Yeah.
But, a lot of the women that I trained, they didn't want to train like that, because it hurts and it doesn't feel good and they're sore for 3 days. And I'm like, great, I can adjust, and I ask my people like, how did you feel? I get that feedback and I find where their comfort level is. And if it's right here, then I'll get them maybe just out of their comfort. just a little bit higher, so that each time I'm just, I'm not pushing them so far that they think I can't do this, but it's just far enough to give them that confidence that, hey, I did more than last time. And training like that isn't going to turn you into a beast. I was a beast to begin with. My personality and who I am and what I've gone through in my life as a child created this energy inside of me that my outside needed to match. And so if I were a, very small, slender, delicate woman, it wouldn't match my personality. And so this is, the physical manifestation of who I am.
Yeah, 100%. And I always, tell the story about when I was in college, getting bigger and stronger. One of my friends would always say, like, Ryan, you're going to the gym, you're getting bigger. I wanted to go to the gym, but I'm just afraid that I'm just going to get too bulky. And then finally one day I just told her, I said, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go out to clubs, when we go out to eat, weighs more than 90% of the dumbbells in the gym. And you're not gaining any muscle from lugging that thing around all the time. So, and that sort of convinced her to come in. So it's all about, just try it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to get healthier.
Well, on top of that too is confidence. Because when I first got into weightlifting, somebody very close to me, one of my family members, told me, she was like, "Well, if you get muscular, you're never going to be with somebody who's going to want to be with you." And and I held on to that belief system for a little while until I realized that I didn't want somebody to be with me because of how I looked. I wanted someone to be with me for who I am.
Absolutely.
And accept me for how I look. But if it's just that first level, then they're not the right person at all. And I learned that lesson the hard way, and I got my heart broken. And, if I can teach women that from the beginning, that you be good with you first, whether it's muscles or not muscles, you decide how you want to look, not let society or a man or your family or whomever dictate how it is that you want to look. How do you feel best? What weight are you best at? Yep. And, for them to answer that, it takes a little while because they're not sure. They've been bombarded and confused with all these images and people. And I think it's worse now than it was back then. Back then it was magazines and television. And I mean, television was free, but magazines you had to buy. You're only exposed to them when you went to the store. Now it's on your phone. And you can just do this for hours, and then you lose yourself, and you have no idea who you are anymore because you're always looking outside of yourself and never inside of yourself.
Absolutely. That's one of the big things that I love to bring up too, is just, how the technology has made things better and it's made it worse. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's a way that can connect so many people, but it's also a way that, like you said, I mean, people can always be constantly reminded of some of the things that they deep down want to change, but they haven't changed yet. So it really is something that a lot of people do have to be careful for. But I always love to ask too, because if you were to poll the general public, you would get a very, very small singular percentage. I'd probably be about 1 or 2% of people that would be willing to basically go up on stage and pose in front of a bikini, basically in front of people. Was that something that you had to work up a lot of courage for? Because I mean, it's one of those things that it does take a lot of courage. It does take, a lot of determination, willpower, but was that a hard thing for you? Or was it like some of the other guests that we've had on who just said, it just got to a point where I was just I just trained so hard that I just wanted to go up on stage and show it off?
I think, I don't know about a lot of other people, but in how it was for me was that I am a performance artist, and my body is my art. And so getting on stage was just, just this big cultivation, this, convergent point of all the work. And I knew it would always be a checkpoint. And that's why I did all these national shows. I would hear people say on Facebook and stuff don't go to a national show unless you're ready and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's not about that. It's a checkpoint in my life. On November 2016, I stepped on stage at a national level show and looked like this, and I was 27 years old, and that's how I looked. And I have that the rest of my life of if I had an art show, I would put, my painting on the wall, take a picture of it and be like, I made this, and keep that forever. And that's the same thing with my physique. because I know that when I'm 50 years old, I'm going to pull that folder back out and be like, I did that when I was 27 years old, And so what everybody says about, getting on stage, and for me, it's just, it's, it's a checkpoint, and it's, a gallery showing of my physique.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that pictures even do it justice. That's like the real kind of like sad, frustrating thing about bodybuilding nowadays is the level of commitment people put into their posing routines and their performance. And, it's improving, I think, because of like classic physique and, just more people talking about how it's important. But, all the people that I would get, I would really teach them about like, this is an art form, and then that really removes that resistance about competing, because you can't control the competition part. You're in front of the judges, they decide whatever it is that they decide. And if I go into competitions with that attitude, yeah, I haven't wanted to get on stage because I'm never good enough. But if I have the mindset of I'm an artist and this is my best physique that I've put together and I'm going to perform, like that's a positive spin on it all. And there's no stress. Like I'm just going to do the best that I can do. And, the competition part didn't work for me. Like I wouldn't want to get on stage, and I've dropped out of shows because of it, and then I've adjusted my mindset and figured out this is how I can do it. This is how I can get on stage and be the best me and confident. And that's always been my feedback. The judges say like, oh, you're not lean enough, but you have really great stage presence. You look really confident, and that's the show. That's what I go out there to convince them to believe that I'm one of the best. And I firmly believe the last placement that I got was at nationals. Like there was women that were leaner than me, and their physiques were very quality, but their posing and their confidence didn't show through. And so the judges were like, they could feel what I was bringing. And they were like, she really wants it. So I got that top 5 and I feel good about it. If I want to get that first place, I know I have to work harder. So,
yeah. How is the posing different from bodybuilding to physique? I've always wondered that, because a lot of people nowadays still call like the physique division for women, they call that, it's basically the closest thing to bodybuilding that there is. Is there any difference in the posing that they had you guys do?
Yeah. So with the women's bodybuilding, they also have the front lat spread and then the back spread, which is like one of my best poses, the back lat spread. So like that's why I'm always kind of like, I want to do bodybuilding still, because I really like showing that pose. And so when I have done the women's physique, I just do it in my posing routine, because you can do whatever poses you want, whatever looks good on your physique. But in the comparison rounds, with going against the other athletes, they don't do that pose or those two poses.
Yeah, I was going to say, because there always is just a little bit of different tweaks that they use for all the different classes. But one of my favorite questions to ask, because it's not talked about really at all when it comes to Instagram, or a lot of people don't like to bring it up, is that people don't realize that when you guys are getting ready for those shows, you've manipulated through all the dieting and through all the training and all the hard work your body into a look that is not sustainable. I'll give an example. I was at a New Year's Eve party, and a friend of mine came up and said, hey, I watch your podcast. I really love it. I was really shocked. I always thought that, whenever I see pictures of some of these bodybuilders, that they just look that way 24/7. A lot of people in the public don't realize that that is not a sustainable look, that you're not just going to, if you go do bodybuilding, you're not going to look like people look on stage all the time. You are going to have to put on weight. And I always say some people run into bodybuilders in public and they don't even recognize that they're a bodybuilder. They just think that there's someone who just works out a lot and just looks big. But it's one of those things that the general public isn't really that well informed on. Was that a struggle for you at all, sort of realizing that, especially when you're going into a prep, just the months upon months of strict dieting and just training constantly? Was that ever a hard thing for you mentally to sort of adjust to the fact that, hey, no matter all the hard work that I've done, I am going to have to put on weight eventually?
So there's a couple different stages, since I've been doing this now for 8 years, 7 years. When I first did bodybuilding, I was looking at all these women on bodybuilding.com who were like ripped, and and there wasn't even very like that many of them. There was this one woman, her nickname on bodybuilding.com was Chicken Tuna, and she just had like ripped abs, and like her physique was phenomenal. And it didn't even cross my mind that all of her selfies were I mean, they could have been taken the same day or, whatever. But like this girl had it figured out. Like she was just constantly posting, her physique and she looked fabulous. And I'm sure she probably looked like that most of the time. But she was also like, from what I know now, definitely a natural athlete. And that's the first kind of break in the illusion is that the normal general public looks at bodybuilding and they're like, oh, that's amazing. I want to do that. But there's a big veil. There's a barrier, and it's called steroids. And nobody tells you that in the beginning. And so everybody's chasing this physique that they're never going to get, ever. And I was on that side of the veil. And, I had people telling me when I was going national level, they're like, so, this is what it takes to go national. And I'm like, no, I'm never going to do that. That's not who I am. And just like anything, you get swept up in the crowd and you just go like this and you follow everybody else and you're like, this is what I want to do. This is my life. And everybody's doing it. And that's just how it is in the bodybuilding world. And then nobody talks about it. And especially the women, they keep their mouths very tight. And so I've been talking to a lot of them and asking them and learning from them and, talking to the women who I'm like, I never want to look like her. Like whatever she did, I'm not doing that. And I would ask them and they would tell me, and, and then the girls who like, have a really good balance on size and femininity, you ask them too, and they'll tell you, and they do these on and off cycles and you're not always stage ready. And and especially for the women, the men, it's totally different. But for the women, it's, it's a very delicate balance between all of it. And staying lean for women year round is very, you can do it. You can be lean, but you're not going to be big and lean at the same time. So you need to make a decision. Are you going to be big or are you going to be lean? And the interesting thing is that when you're, a bodybuilder in real life in person, like big is 180 pounds. And like, that's just like my normal weight. I'm not taking anything. Like I'm just a normal human being that lifts weights. And that's just, and I could diet and I could do cardio and I would like lose some weight. But when you're going contest prep ready and you're getting down to that very, like I get down to like 145 or even less. I've been like 140, 142, and that wasn't even lean enough yet, and that you can't get down to like, natural. And then to stay down there, it just, and I've seen the women that have tried to do that. I've been watching women for 8 years now and studying what happens to their physiques with the ones who try to do show after show after show, and everything falls apart. Their life falls apart. Their face like falls apart. Like you can just see this mental and emotional anguish in them. And whether that's from all the work and continually just driving at that, or if it's from the pressure that they're putting on themselves to keep going, or it's a combination of the both. So I'd be curious to see if somebody who is like very mentally sound, a mentally stable woman, which good luck finding one of those, like
you heard that from her, not from me, everyone.
if she was in a good place and, she just was like, I'm just going to be lean all the time. Like, then she's like on a different level, she's like evolved and meditates every day. And like, so, my answer to that is,
she'd be on some other type of drugs, not steroids, but other types of drugs.
Right. Yeah. Or on a different planet, something like that. So, but yeah, staying lean all the time, again, that comes back to the confidence thing is like, and that's what I would coach all of my people. I've coached men and women, but a lot of women come to me and that's what they come to me for. They see me and they're like, wow, she looks really confident. How can I get a piece of that? And I teach them. And it's starting from the inside. Like this is just the shell. This is what you want to present to the world. And if this is not, and a lot of women come to me with this not put together, but that reflects that the inside is not put together. So if I start from the foundation and build the inside, then it starts happening on the outside. And so, staying lean all the time is because you have a problem with the people looking at you. And if that problem is penetrating you, then your defense mechanisms aren't high enough and you're not strong enough to like repel that. So
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, I mean, we brought it up, but I've never really talked about it, is the confidence aspect. Because, I mean, just me, myself, just when I was bigger and stronger in college, just the confidence that I had to be more assertive, to, go up and talk to people that maybe I might not have had, the confidence to do. Could you explain kind of how that has evolved for you too? Because that's one of the things too that not that many people realize will happen when you do start, for the people that do really want to adapt a more healthy and fit lifestyle, is that you do get more confident because you see yourself and you say, hey, I achieved this, I can do anything. But how has that benefited you, that just boost in confidence?
hmm so what I realized, from the beginning, I've always been very confident in my abilities because I had to take care of my mom at a very young age. Like I had responsibilities and I did them. I've always taken care of myself. I've always, been public speaking and just doing everything I needed to do. So that wasn't a problem. My confidence lied in my body image. And I inherited that, belief system from my mom because she believed that she wasn't good enough and, blah, blah, blah. So to unravel that whole thing, I did bodybuilding. If I only have abs, then everything will be perfect. So I got the abs and everything was worse off than I was in the beginning.
Same thing happened
So
to me.
I had to wrestle with the fact of, okay, like I've reached this physical goal, yet everything else in my life has fallen apart. And then you have to like, do some sort of internal work and find that balance of like, all right, can I accept myself at this size, at this size, at this size? You can have preferences. I prefer to be 160 pounds. I'm 176 right now. So obviously I don't prefer to, be uncomfortable enough to be in that state all the time. But if I wanted to be, I could. I know how to do it. And once I get that motivation, no problem. But I've made myself okay with the fact I'm like, I don't really want to do that right now. And so you have this sliding scale of like, my confidence is stable. Yes, I know I could be, more confident here when I'm like at this weight or whatever, but at what sacrifice is it going to cost me?
Yep.
Is it going to cost me relationships? Is it going to cost me my favorite foods? Is it going to cost me my job? All these things that bodybuilders don't talk about is like, losing their girlfriends and boyfriends and being mean to their kids because they're hungry or, losing their jobs because they're not working enough, like all of that stuff. So you got to like check and balance yourself. Like, how much is this really worth it to me? And to the people who are like, yes, it's 100% worth it. I'll sacrifice everything. I'm like, okay, really? But how happy are you here when you're at that spot? Like really happy? Is it really worth it to you? And some of them say yes. And I'm like, okay, great. At least you understand that about yourself. So that's my answer to that is when you have a strong foundation and you're solid in who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it, then that judgment that comes from, that dark, scary place in your own head or externally can't get into your space and, confuse you with what you should or shouldn't be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. But now going on, two of my fun questions that I love to ask, two of my favorite also is that when I started, working out and getting bigger and stronger in college, the one negative thing for me is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next few months, and I'll give an example. Like this morning, they came home with groceries, and I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and carry in all the groceries. Do you find that because of the way that you look, people just assume that you can do favors like that for them?
I think maybe not so much because I'm a woman. Maybe the most annoying thing is like, oh, I wouldn't want to arm wrestle you, and my answer always is like, I never would,
Yeah.
Then I start talking to them about like, the spiral fractures and blah, blah. And they're just like, what, they wanted it to be a very like short and sweet
Yeah.
whatever they imagine that whole story to be in their head, that I would arm wrestle them
Yeah.
or something. That's the worst one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, just also, yeah, like being a guy, like, I'll give an example. Like my last summer, every other weekend, it was a different friend calling up, hey, Ryan, I got to move out of my parents' house. Can you help me move my couch or my chair? And it got to the point where I just said, like, hey, as long as I get my workout done before I help you move, because I'm not going to get too tired moving your stuff that I won't be able to work out that day. But I mean, also, like I said before, like being 6'3", that's a double-edged sword. Because if they saw me walking down the street, even with no muscles, they'd say, oh yeah, that guy could do it. So it's something that I do deal with, and I enjoy doing it. Just at the very beginning, it was hard to deal with because I used to be like a long, lengthy kind of kid because I was a pitcher, so you had to be kind of skinny and you had to be just kind of wiry. So yeah, that was really a big change for me. But now probably my favorite question to ask, and again, this is a multi-million-dollar idea for anyone out there, but when it comes to clothes for fit women, I mean, fit guys have their own problems, but clothes for fit women, I always like to say, if you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't really your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time, where it's just because you have bodybuilders are supposed to have the small waist and the big lower bodies, so jeans don't really fit. But what are some ways that you kind of compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited?
Well, I went out and started my own fitness clothing brand.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see what I wanted in the size that I wanted, so I'm creating it now.
Yeah.
It I mean, I feel like I want to create it for all these women that, like, not only I am, like, I want to look beautiful and feminine in my clothes and feel good in them and not be restricted by them when I'm training, but I also don't want to wear parachute clothing, and like completely cover up my physique. I work hard and I want to see it, but then I also don't want to wear nothing so that like people are like blatantly staring at me, at the gym. So it's like, in terms of, the line that I'm like putting together is I want to be able to wear my shirt. This is one of the cuts of the shirt. So it's got the deep V, and then it also has, this short sleeve.
Yeah, you got to show off the arms, obviously.
I can wear this at the gym.
Yeah.
Okay. Or I can wear a tank underneath it, and then I wear this to the gym. Or I can wear it out of the gym. Like this looks like a normal shirt. It's breathable. It's stretchy. And that's the main thing for, muscular, or even just like, not super lean, ripped, like you just want kind of this loose, comfortable feeling. Yeah. And that's the idea, is like, I don't want to just wear like my entire wardrobe is fitness clothing. Like that's it, and I had that vision when I was in college. I was like, one day when I get money, I'm going to buy the clothes that I want to wear, and it's going to be all fitness wear. Yeah. And that day is today. Like my entire closet is all fitness wear, but I've been going through all of them for the last 8 years, being like, all right, this one isn't quite, taking notes, and then watching what the women are wearing and what they like to wear, and, all of it, studying it, absorbing it, figuring out, talking to them, like, what do you like about those pants? What do you like about that shirt? And just fine tuning it until, the creation of Archeo 1. So
that is awesome, because I've always said, like, I had two other fashion people, like just pure fashion designers that didn't compete or do anything and come on, and I told them, I said, like, I have all these people that come on, bodybuilders, male and female, and they desperately need clothing options, and none of them got to it, but we finally have someone on here who's taken the initiative and came up with it. But what were some struggles that you had starting out with when it came to making those clothes? Was it just a lot of trial and error with figuring out, like you said, you did talk to a lot of people and figure out like what they like best in their clothing, but out of the general consensus, what would you say is the number one thing that women are looking for, that are fit, that are looking for in their clothes?
Leggings.
Yep.
They want the leggings. So here, I'll see if this video can.
Yeah. Those look cool. Yeah. Yep.
So, and the thing about the leggings, I've been looking at all of them, and not just in the bodybuilding world, but in the real fitness world, which is like Nike and Lululemon and who's the other one? Fabletics. Oh, yep. Is their prints are ugly. Like I just hate them. They're like, who designs these, and why do women buy them? Yep. And the reason they buy them is because that's the only thing available. That's the only thing they have, and they're gonna buy leggings, so they might as well get like, one from whatever. And then, it breaks down to the price and the quality. Like I can look at leggings on Amazon and I'm like, oh, they were $20. And then you get them and they fall apart in one session. That was a frustrating thing for me, having like big muscular legs and going through a workout and, being like, oh, should I bring another pair of pants just in case these break? Like I needed high quality leggings that look good, that will last 3 to 5 years. And I know the fabrics and which ones last and which ones don't just by looking at it. I don't even have to touch it, but I'll touch it and be like, nah. Or I'll look at the stitching and I'll be like, no, that's not going to work. And really it's like starting this business has been really easy and I've been very blessed and grateful. The first guy that we met to do these leggings, I was like, you're the one. That's made from recycled plastic bottles. So it's not only, an eco-conscious product, it's like super high quality stitching. He has the same stitching as Lululemon. It's handmade in Arizona here. So I can go in, try the pants on. I'm like, yep, they fit. I'm taking them through the workouts and being like, all right, I can sell these to people and be confident that they're going to be happy. Because I've worn a lot of leggings over the years and I know what works and what doesn't. Yeah. So it's a dream come true. And, my partner Zahn, he painted this.
Wow.
This is his painting that we laid on the fabric. And we're super excited about all the designs that we have ready to come out. We're just doing basically one release per month that cycles with the new moon and the full moon. And we'll just be putting them out all year. And I can't wait to show everyone.
That is so awesome. And again, you guys, they have an Instagram account and I'll leave the link down below for that. Is there a website also that people could go to and look for them?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll find that, and I'll definitely leave a link down below, and I highly recommend you go and get that because, honestly, I mean, all my guests that have been on here, they're looking for those type of clothes, and we have someone that finally made them, so I'll make sure to hit up a lot of the guests that I had on and say, like, hey, I finally found a guest that has been, getting the stuff that I've been preaching about that really, really needs, and, I'll have to find someone for the guy bodybuilders now because they're a whole different thing, but for the women, we finally found one that's making the clothes.
No, we have a male clothing, too, for them.
All right, the males, too, then. I'll get a hold of them, too. Yeah, that's... Because, yeah, for the guys, I mean, that's just... But the guys have it a lot easier, though, too. I mean, they just basically need, like, shorts and, like, a nice t-shirt. But for the guys, yeah, they still need a lot of different options. So we have someone, Archeo1. I'll leave a link down below for all that stuff. And now I like to ask these few final questions to every guest that I have on before...
Yeah, let me say one more thing. Yep. What we've been talking about before that, I've been talking about, this defense of energy coming in. People telling you how you want to be and affecting your confidence, and also, this strength coming out. So this idea of this, moving defense and strength, and that's what Archeo1 means. The root of the word, it means to defend and possessed by strength. And so that's, really the heart of this brand is to wear it and to just, who you are. And even if you don't know who you are yet, you're working on it. But, to have this icon, this symbol that you are anchored in and what you're doing and what you're going out in the world. And it gives you that confidence and that empowerment and motivation, to be connected to these other people that believe in the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. And like you were talking about, I mean, it's all about, just making those connections with people. And that's one of the things that I love about this podcast is that, I mean, it's allowed me to talk to people who I probably would never have talked to because a lot of them, because they live in different parts, and I've had, guests from like England and Australia on, but it's just so great to come on and hear people's stories. But I also love to ask, I mean, I ask these questions. I have a little questionnaire, but I don't boil it down now to a couple of questions now that I think are my most important. But now, what is one thing that you would change about the sport of bodybuilding if you had the all-knowing power to do so?
I think I would give the women more freedom to be who they are rather than be dictated by, the placements and how they want them to look. I think for the men, it's a different story. I think men more have this like real primal urge to compete and battle and just like really who's the best. And I think for women, it has a very toxic effect on us. And, when we get together and we're like talking about being sisters and we want to like do it together, like the the women, humanity as a general broad sense. We want to be together and to communicate and feel each other. That's just, that estrogen nature. And I think that bodybuilding, has really pushed the masculinity on women. And I'm not talking about the physical. I'm talking about like the emotional, like interaction that the women have with each other.
Whereas some of the guys are just willing, they can like rip each other's throat out basically just to win the title. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But then afterwards, they're fine.
Yeah.
Done. They're like, yeah, good job, bro. Like, I'm still pissed at you, but whatever. But with the women, I think we're a little bit more sensitive, and we seek friendship and connection. And I think, in my vision, my plan, and my goal with Archeo One is to do that for women, to create this space that, like as a brand of art, we're putting art on pants. Like, I want to put together a place for women to be like, whatever you want to look like, we're a bodybuilder, a women's physique, come and perform. Come and be with your other women who have the same belief system of defending and strengthening their souls. And then it's not a competition. It's just like, hey, on this due date, 90 days from now, we're setting up shop in Texas or in Arizona or in Florida. Come and show. Like an art show, an art gallery. I think that if I could do bodybuilding like that, I would 100% do it.
Yeah, it really does. Like I have so many women on, and you see, especially on Instagram, the women who they post and all the other women comment, like, oh, you look great, you look amazing. They do try to be nice, but then it's like the competitions, it does sometimes bring out, some things in people, and I've seen it all the time from all the guests that we've had on just talking about that. But it is one of those things too, are just like, yeah, if you could make it a little bit easier. And plus the women, they have to go through so much more than I think the guys, especially even when it comes to like the stuff that they make them wear. Guys just have to wear pants basically. They can just wear shorts kind of when they go to the thing, or especially the lower level. But the bodybuilders, they just wear that little thing. But then all the other things that are put on the women too, where they gotta look feminine, they gotta do all that. Where the guys, I always like to make the comparison where if you're driving down a highway, the difference between guys and girls is that guys, it's just a straight highway where they can just go as fast as they can, where for women, they got to weave, they got to go through underpasses, they got to take left lanes, take right lanes. Now, before we wrap things up, I always love to ask, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Let's see. 18 years old. I feel like my college experience was good, but maybe if I would have picked a cheaper college, then that would have been better off.
Believe me, I'm feeling that too, yeah.
Get out of college what I thought I was going to get, which was a career and a job, and, I got experience, but it was an expensive experience. So I would have chosen or told her, just save a little bit of money and, do it differently.
Believe me, I realized that too. I'm at UPS and I make decent money, but going to the certain college that I went to meant that I had to stay home with my parents for a year and a half after I graduated. So I finally get to move out in a couple of months. But yeah, it enabled that. So it's definitely one of those things too that I would have given myself advice for.
And I think just like living, like at 18 years old, you don't know who you are yet.
Absolutely.
I really didn't know who I was until I was like 27, and then I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm going to be a fashion designer. I'm going to be a writer. Like, I'm going to coach people. Like, it all became very clear. And so all the time that I spent doing all these things, paying for people to teach me and tell me, like maybe if I just would have gone out and explored who I was first and then been like, okay, now I'm going to go to school.
Yep.
It's hard to say like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but really, I didn't know myself to invest 4 years in a college paying tuition and going to classes just to figure out who I was. Like,
100%. Yeah. If I could do it all over again, yeah, I would definitely make some changes. But again, like they always say, the stuff in your past really makes you the person that you are today. So it's something that you gotta realize too. But again, everyone, go and give Ariel a follow. I highly, highly recommend it. ArcEO1, everyone go and give that a follow. I'll shout it out. I'll send it to all of my guests that I had on. I'm sure a lot of people would love that. And now lastly, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Yes, I want to shout out to my partner, Zahn. He is the man who makes my dreams come true.
That's awesome.
And then his 3 sons are also big motivation for me. very young and learning and growing, and it's really fun to see them go through that, and it gives me a lot of just pleasure and motivation in my life.
How important is that though for you too, especially because I always love to ask this for the female bodybuilders because I mean it's not a normal sight to see a woman with big muscles, walking around. How important is it for you too to just let those kids know, especially that that it's perfectly normal that someone can look like that, and it's not
Well,
something
that's the thing
yeah
about kids is they don't realize it's not normal.
yeah
It's all the adults that put
mm-hmm.
in, they get that in their head that it's not.
yeah
So, the biggest thing for me is I mean, obviously they can look out and see that I'm different than
yeah
other people. And the benefit is they get to see how I live.
mm-hmm.
I'm an athlete, I'm eating a certain way, and they get exposed to all those things. And, I teach them and they get to make their own choices, but, hopefully eventually it will impact them to live healthier, better lives in the future.
Absolutely, and I say that's the best thing, especially with the obesity problem. We've heard so many people say, what, if the parents, if you teach them the proper ways, those people are way, way better off usually later on in life because they have the styles. So again, I mean, that is definitely, if that's another piece of advice I could bring out there is, teach the kids the right ways to eat, especially because, especially now everyone's sort of, it's just getting worse and worse year by year. But I
Well,
mean,
for me, I grew up on junk food.
yep, me too.
I was taking care of myself, and my mom was sick, and I had no knowledge, and that's why I got into bodybuilding. Was I wanted to learn how to do this, how to feed myself, how to take control of my life, and I struggled with depression and anxiety from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I still deal with it, but it's better when I eat healthier.
Yes.
And so if I can teach people that and get kids from the beginning of their lives on healthy food, that it doesn't, slowly over time accumulate to this crippling depression, anxiety, and, diseases that take years to manifest. And when, they're like, oh, they're just kids, they can eat whatever no, it starts from the beginning. And it's very important. And it's hard battle to fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Because kids don't know that that's going to happen to them in the future. They just think, I want candy, I want it now. So 100%. I mean, I totally agree. And everyone out there, like I said before, go and follow Ariel. I highly, highly recommend it. Like I always say, just looking at some of her photos, you'll say wow, I got to get off the couch and stop eating those Twinkies and get in shape. I mean, everyone out there, and again, go check out Archeo1. I highly, highly recommend it. Leave all the links to everything down below. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.